There's a city that never sleeps, a city where dreams collide with reality, where fortunes rise and fall before the sun even sets. It's a place of towering ambition, relentless energy, and layered history written in steel, stone, and soul. New York City. The name alone echoes across the world. But before the flashing lights of Times Square, before Wall Street and Broadway, before skyscrapers kissed the clouds, there was an island, wild and unclaimed, sitting between rivers, waiting for the world to arrive. It began not with America, but with a fur trade. Long before the United States was born, in the early 1600s, the Dutch arrived on the shores of what they called New Netherland. They weren't seeking glory or salvation. They came for business. The Dutch West India Company sent explorers and traders to the New World, and in 1624, they established a settlement at the southern tip of an island. The native Lenape people called Mannahatta, meaning hilly island. This outpost was soon named New Amsterdam. It was a tiny town of wooden huts, muddy streets, and ambitious dreams. But from the very beginning, it had a character unlike anywhere else. The Dutch allowed freedom of religion, encouraged trade, and invited people from different parts of Europe to settle. It quickly became a melting pot, even before the term existed. Germans, Africans, Jews, English, Irish, they all passed through New Amsterdam's narrow streets. It wasn't always peaceful, but it was diverse. The foundation of New York's chaotic, beautiful complexity had already been poured. Then, in 1664, English warships sailed into the harbor. Without a shot fired, the Dutch surrendered, and New Amsterdam became New York, named after the Duke of York, brother to King Charles II. The city changed names, but not its spirit. It remained a center of trade, now under English rule, growing rapidly in population and significance. By the early 1700s, New York was one of the busiest ports in the British colonies, but its streets were also soaked in contradictions. Wealthy merchants lived in elegant homes, while enslaved Africans were auctioned just blocks away. Yes, New York was a slave city, an uncomfortable truth often overlooked. By the mid-18th century, nearly 20% of the city's population was enslaved, working in homes, docks, and markets. As the winds of revolution began to stir across the colonies, New York found itself in the eye of the storm. Tensions rose between British authorities and rebellious colonists. After the Boston Tea Party, New Yorkers held their own protests. When war finally broke out in 1775, New York was fiercely contested. George Washington knew the city was strategically vital and attempted to defend it, but in 1776, after the Battle of Long Island, the British seized control. For much of the Revolutionary War, New York City was under British occupation. The city burned, both literally and figuratively. In 1776, a mysterious fire swept through Manhattan, destroying hundreds of buildings. No one knows who started it. Some blamed patriots. Others suspected loyalists. But the damage was immense. When the war ended in 1783, New York was a scarred but free city. George Washington famously entered the city on Evacuation Day as British troops departed. And it was here that he bid farewell to his officers at Fraunces Tavern, tears in his eyes. For a brief moment, New York even served as the first capital of the United States, where Washington took the first presidential oath on the balcony of Federal Hall in 1789. Then came the boom. The 1800s transformed New York from a port town to a global powerhouse. The invention of the steamboat, the construction of the Erie Canal in 1825, and the arrival of the railroads connected the city to the heart of America. Goods flowed in, so did people. Immigrants by the millions began arriving at New York Harbor. The city became the front door of the American dream. By the mid-19th century, New York was bursting at the seams. The skyline hadn't yet risen, but the population was exploding. Immigrant communities formed in dense, overcrowded neighborhoods. Germans in the Lower East Side, Irish in Five Points, Italians, Jews, Chinese, and so many more. They brought their languages, customs, food, labor, and hopes. Ellis Island opened in 1892 and became the processing center for over 12 million immigrants. For many, the first thing they saw was not a building, but a Statue of Liberty, erected in 1886 as a gift from France. Her torch lit up New York Harbor and became a beacon to the world. The poem at her base reads, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free." It wasn't just poetry. It was prophecy. It was New York. But this golden promise had a dark side. Tenement housing was cramped and filthy. Disease was rampant. Jobs were scarce. Gangs roamed the streets. 5 Points was one of the most notorious slums in America. Crime, corruption, and chaos were as much a part of the city as culture and opportunity. During the Civil War, New York was a Union city, but not a united one. Wealthy businessmen profited from the war while working-class Irish immigrants were drafted to fight. In 1863, the draft riots erupted, one of the bloodiest civil uprisings in American history. For 4 days, the city burned. Rioters attacked black residents, abolitionists, and anyone seen as wealthy or privileged. The violence revealed the raw racial and class tensions beneath the city's surface. Still, New York endured. It always does. The late 19th century saw a transformation of epic proportions. Skyscrapers began to rise. Central Park was built. The Brooklyn Bridge connected Manhattan to Brooklyn in 1883. Wall Street became the financial nerve center of the nation. The New York Stock Exchange roared to life. And with it, so did the city's reputation as the capital of capitalism. Art, literature, music, politics, everything collided in New York. The Harlem Renaissance in the 1920s saw black artists, writers, and thinkers reshape American culture. Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, and Duke Ellington turned Harlem into a global symbol of black excellence and expression. In the same decade, the Roaring Twenties saw wealth, jazz, and prohibition fuel wild parties and mafia power. But that golden age crashed hard. The Great Depression hit New York like a hammer. Wall Street collapsed. Bread lines stretched across blocks. And yet, amid the ruin, the city rebuilt. Under Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia and President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal, public works created jobs. The skyline grew higher. The Empire State Building rose. The spirit of resilience never died. Then came World War II, and with it, a new chapter. New York became a hub of military production and political influence. After the war, it became the home of the United Nations, symbolizing its status not just as an American city, but a global one. The post-war years were a golden age. The population surged. The Yankees dominated baseball. Broadway thrived. And television made New York the media capital of the world. But underneath, racial segregation, poverty, and housing inequality simmered. In the 1960s and 70s, the city was tested again. Economic collapse, rising crime, and political corruption pushed New York to the brink. The 1977 blackout, the Son of Sam murders, and near bankruptcy made it feel like the city was unraveling. The Bronx was burning. Times Square was filled with crime and decay. But New York never gives up. The 1980s brought Wall Street excess and a new skyline. The Twin Towers of the World Trade Center stood tall, symbols of power and modern ambition. Hip-hop was born in the Bronx. Punk exploded in the East Village. Art blossomed in Soho. The city began to find its rhythm again. Then, everything changed. The 11th of September, 2001. Terror struck at the heart of New York. The World Trade Center collapsed in clouds of ash and horror. Thousands died. The city was shaken but not broken. In the days that followed, firefighters, police, and ordinary people became heroes. The world watched as New York mourned and then rebuilt. The Freedom Tower rose from the ashes. The 9/11's memorial became a place of reflection. And once again, the city endured, stronger, sadder, but never defeated. Today, New York is home to over 8 million people from more than 180 countries. It's the capital of finance, media, fashion, food, and dreams. From Wall Street to Washington Heights, Chinatown to Chelsea, from Yankee Stadium to Coney Island, the city pulses with life. It is not a perfect city. It is not an easy city, but it is a city unlike any other. New York's history isn't just a timeline of events. It's a living force. You can feel it in the bricks of old tenements, in the songs echoing from subway stations, in the way strangers share space and stories without saying a word. It is a city built by immigrants, fueled by workers, inspired by artists, and carried by resilience. If you've ever walked its streets, stood in its parks, stared up at its towers, or watched its skyline glow against the night, you feel it. New York is more than a city. It is an idea, a story that never ends, a song that never stops playing, a challenge, a promise, a contradiction, a legend. And now, that legend lives on in the people who hustle through its streets, who build, create, fight, and dream. Every sunrise over the East River, every light that flickers in a high-rise window, is another reminder that New York's story is still being written. So if this story moved you, if you felt even a glimpse of what makes this city so powerful, so humandrop alike, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more journeys into the real history that shaped our world. Because history isn't just about the past. Sometimes it's standing right in front of you, buzzing, burning, beating like the heart of New York.